J.K. Rowling has never been shy about sharing her political opinions, and she recently said some things that have upset a lot of her readers. It's about LGBTQ issues, but that actually doesn't matter here. What I'd like to talk about is the people who've said that J.K. Rowling's opinions have ruined Harry Potter for them. It's a topic that we've touched on in various ways, and I think this is another great illustration of how these things work in real life, that will let us get further into how our brains process the world and the stories or art that we take in. Normally, we think that stories or movies are separate from the real world, and so, at least in theory, our opinion of the author of a book shouldn't affect how we judge the book at all. So unless someone actively chooses to boycott J.K. Rowling's work, they should have the option of reading Harry Potter or Fantastic Beasts and enjoying them all the same. Of course, in practice, we all know that's not true. And disliking the writer of the book, in this case, has a very real effect on us when we try to read it. Obviously, if you watch this channel, you know that our feelings about these things can't be divided. There's no separate emotional machinery that allows us to process a fictional story without reacting to the real world. But what I think might be more relevant here is exactly how that emotional reaction functions. Because it's not that it makes you dislike the book or feel bad while reading the book, it's actually that you can't read the book in the first place. The emotional process of reading the book, believing what you read, taking interest in the plot, caring about the character, getting confirmation of our values and lessons out of it, can never begin in the first place. Our brain literally releases a chemical that shuts off the rest of our emotional reactions. And it does so for very good reasons that we might not normally think about. This is because reading a book, like hugging, trading, or even speaking, is an exchange with another person. They give you something that you enjoy, and your reaction to that thing helps that person's reputation with others. Other people can see that that person is smart or capable or can do things that others benefit from, which moves that person up in priority when it's time to divide the food or shelter or decide who's a good mate. As a result, our brain is always tracking who we're helping in each of our interactions, and, more importantly, whether we should be helping that person. Because sometimes, by helping someone, we can actually hurt ourselves, or people we care about. If that person has damaged our reputation or those people's reputation, or otherwise hurt their chances of survival. If that harmful person gains in status, that means their opinions will carry more weight with the group, which will do even larger amounts of damage to us or those who we care about. And what's more, because our reputations are so important to our survival, we tend to go out of our way to try to protect and promote our own. And as a result, we're actually very sensitive to any real information we can pick up about each other's abilities. This means that small expressions, signs of consideration of other people's words, or small bits of laughter can affect other people's opinions of a person and what they did. And these reactions, our smallest expressions, laughter and so on, are actually involuntary. And so, certain aspects of our emotional reactions can actually harm us, which defeats the purpose of working with that person in the first place. So how did we end up adjusting to that? Well, our brain developed a means to refuse that type of interaction with another person. Not only do we physically stay away from someone who has harmed us or insulted us, our brain has a chemical response that shuts down anything we might do that would help that person's reputation. This means that things they may tell us, jokes they might say, or stories they might relate, won't ever pass into our emotional machinery to begin with. And this is part of the danger for people who don't relate to the public through politics, but who share their political opinions. People who disagree with those political opinions will react to them as though they were an insult and a threat, and thus, to whatever extent they're aware of what was said, they'll be unable to emotionally process any art or entertainment that person makes. And J.K. Rowling really put herself in a pickle because she seems to have alienated both Democrats and Republicans with various things she said. Though of course it won't make any difference with kids or people who don't follow social media. Now obviously, she has enough money that it's not a huge threat to her, but we all get stressed and react when others don't like us. But I think it's important to realize this aspect of how the brain works. We often think of our instinct as being a primitive thing that's beneath our intellect, because our intellect can choose to go against our feelings sometimes. But our instinct and the feelings it generates actually has a lot more influence than we might realize. Even when we think we're ignoring our emotions, it's usually because we're following other feelings we've gotten that go the other way. But perhaps even more than that, we have to realize that our intellect is not actually the owner of our bodies. It's there to serve another part of us, our genes. And while very often our intellect makes the most active decisions, our genes have several controls in place that can stop our intellect from doing things that will get in the way of our genes being spread, like damaging our reputation or helping people who will hurt us. And so, if we're going to relate to other people, especially as artists, we need to be careful about what we say and do, both on the page and in public. Thanks for your time, and we'll talk more soon.